In March 2018, at a historic meeting of the African Union in Kigali, Rwanda, member states agreed to create an African Continental Free Trade Area. Subsequently, 52 of 55 African Union member states signed up to the agreement, representing a remarkable degree of consensus across the continent. The general public seems to be equally enthusiastic. An opinion poll carried out in November 2018 by the Rockefeller Foundation of over 2,000 citizens across the continent confirmed that an impressive 77% of Africans believe that the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement represented an important step forward. But what does this agreement mean in practice, and how will it affect us? The first thing to point out is, well, it isn't simply a free trade agreement. It's actually much more than that. It's about establishing a unified continental market, including the free movement of labor and investment. Let's focus on three major benefits of the Continental Free Trade Area. Africa is a big continent. You could fit the US, China, and Europe into the continent and still have space to spare. But in economic terms, individual countries are still very small. Take Rwanda, for instance. It's one of the fastest growing economies in the world, but in terms of size, it ranks number 143rd out of 193 economies in the world. This matters because small economies often struggle to attract the much-needed investments. Collectively, the story is very different. The African continent, all 54 economies together, have a collective GDP of $2.5 trillion. That makes it the 8th largest economy in the world, just behind India. And with 1.2 billion potential customers, it makes the continent much more attractive to investments, both from within and from outside the continent. This will encourage business people to make the investments necessary to sustain economic growth and create the job opportunities the continent badly needs. A second argument in favor of the Continental Free Trade Area is that it includes a protocol on the free movement of people. This matters because at present, traveling between African countries for Africans currently can be very challenging. Visas, expensive air tickets, custom clearances, and border controls make it difficult to travel for pleasure and even more difficult to do business across borders. Currently, there are a lot of trained and skilled people across the continent coming out of schools, universities, and colleges who cannot find work. If free movement is endorsed, people will be able to use their talents anywhere in the continent where there is demand for those talents. The continent will be your oyster. A third powerful argument in favor of the Continental Free Trade Area is that it will increase trade between African countries. Less than 1/5 of all exports are currently from one African country to another. Take Kenya, for instance, the largest economy in the East African community. Each year, the country exports $1 billion to Europe and around $500 million to the US worth of products. Kenya's total export amounts to $6 billion. How much do you think Kenya exports to its neighbor Ethiopia? $1 billion? $500 million? $200 million? No. In 2017, it exported just $69 million to Ethiopia. Why? One of the main reasons is the high level of trade taxes. The Continental Free Trade Area Agreement is proposing to remove trade taxes on at least 90% of all trade between African countries. That will provide a big incentive to regional trade. The Economic Commission for Africa estimates that in Eastern Africa, the Continental Free Trade Area could boost regional trade by nearly $1 billion. And the principal sectors that would benefit would be precisely the ones that create much employment, like light manufacturing, processed foods, and textiles, creating as many as 2 million new jobs. African economies will find it hard to become strong economies unless they trade more amongst each other. There is an old Swahili saying that states, umoja ni nguvu, utengano ni udhaifu. United we stand, divided we fall.